Hey, and good evening, and welcome back to Friday Night Live with Kimmy65 and Griffin Gaming. We are your co-hosts, and we are back on a Friday, the last Friday of the
Yes.
month. Kimmy, this is 4 shows. We made it into the end of the month. We gave a little test trial, and folks seem to be coming out and watching us. And those of you who are here tonight, thank you. It's a Friday night. We know you could be doing a whole lot of other stuff. But the good thing about getting Kimmy on Friday is that he doesn't have to go to work in the morning. Because when we get him on Sunday, that brother has got to go to work in the morning. So yeah, I'm always glad to have him on board, especially because of the shows that we cover on Friday Night Live. Um, Mr. Square Peg, welcome back. Good to see you. And so we want to let you guys know what Friday Night Live is. Friday Night Live is different from our Sunday show. It is our show where we want you, our viewers, and our participate in our show. Yeah, you can put your questions in the chat box, but we want to encourage you to come on the show live with us and talk with Kimmy and myself. If you have any thoughts about what we're talking about in relation to Star Citizen. Hey, we got somebody giving us a raid. Oh, wow. Table of Horrors. Thank you so much,
Oh
Table of
gosh.
Horrors. That's awesome. Shiver and the gang, Miss Hearts, and all those wonderful people over there who, hey, they sent us some folks, so we love that. Carlisle Gaming, welcome.
These guys
Welcome,
are awesome.
everybody from the raid. So, again, our show is about you, the participants, participating in our show. What's up, Tekmar? And we want you guys to hop in. There'll be a link that will pop up. You'll also see it on our page. Make sure you don't click on the one that says Discord. Click on the one that says Friday Night Live. That'll put you in a queue. We'll put you in the green. It'll put you in the green room. We'll put you in a queue, and then we'll bring you onto the show, and you can share and talk with us. So we're looking forward to talking to you guys tonight. Carlisle, I see you. Good to see you. And Nescovian, thank you.
Oh seven
Nescavian,
guys.
I'm sorry. Good to see you as well. So, Kimmy, before we get going, I got to share a couple of some. Well, let's talk about the bad news, right? Because we had some bad news tonight.
Okay, yeah.
Kimmy and I were kind of bouncing messages to each other. Some of you may have already heard that Chadwick Boseman passed away, evidently this evening. Those of you who know Chadwick Boseman is, mostly people know him Black Panther, but there were other movies he was in, such as Marshall, 42, and several other films.
James
And
Brown.
yeah, we were really saddened to hear about his passing. And amidst all that's going on in the world with COVID and everything else,
Yeah.
this was just another kicker that just kind of, I know it was like a punch in the stomach to me. Kimmy, we got something coming through audio wise, some weird,
What is going on with me
I know
tonight?
something weird. That's okay. It's gone now. Um,
Wakanda
yeah,
forever.
Kimmy, you're big into Marvel and following DC in the comics. I mean, talk to me about the impact you think that whole character of Black Panther had in the sense of, just the whole entertainment thing and comics and
I
society as
mean, it
well.
was true to the comic. I mean, when Stanley first introduced Chadwick, well, Chadwick, right? He
Mm-hmm.
is the Black Panther. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when Stanley first introduced the Black Panther, it was a bold thing for him to do because it was during the times of a lot of civil unrest, similar to today. Um, when he Stan decided to say, "Hey, I'm going to stand up and go against the grain and speak up and come from the heart." And he introduced the Black Panther. It was during those times. So it was between 65 and 68 that they introduced Black Panther, and it was pretty bold to say that this character came from the heart of Africa, and it was a much advanced civilization. And to put it right there in the comic book, it was a bold move by Stan, and I got to give him an '07 for that.
Yep. Yep. Definitely.
That character held the test of time.
Definitely. And I have to say, I was talking to some friends just before, about an hour before this. Kimmy and I were sending messages, and I talked to some other friends. And one of the things that came up is, sometimes there's a character that gets like just so written in stone. It becomes hard to picture somebody else doing the role, right? I know I was like that with Heath Ledger when it came to the Batman series. I still
Yes.
feel that he was the epitome of that role. I appreciate other people who've done it. I like Jack Nicholson's even role of it, but he took it to
Yep.
another space, and in some ways has kind of identified that role now.
He's a standard.
Yeah, even though there have been some people who followed up after him, right? But that one just sticks in my head. And so even for this particular
Yeah.
role with Black Panther, one, because of the uniqueness of the character, but two, his portrayal of the character. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. You'd hate to see that franchise not happen any further, but at the same time, it's hard to picture it without him. So, rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. Condolences to his family. To those of you who are into the whole community of Marvel. Yeah, this was kind of a that, but sorry to hear that this happened after a 40-year battle with stage 3 colon cancer. Kept it very private. He did not tell people about it. My daughter happened to tell me that she saw some appearance he made not too long ago, and that he looked very drawn and thin, and a lot of people
Yes.
assumed that maybe
It
he
was
was
a
just
picture
working
that
too
came out.
hard or something. But now we know what happened, and respecting his privacy,
Yeah, we
I can
know.
understand it. But yeah, thanks for sharing that background, Kimmy, because that was really good stuff. Okay, we're gonna change the channel, and we're gonna keep going a little bit here. Kimmy, I got something to
Hey,
show
Griff.
you.
I
Yep,
want to mention something else
sure.
too on
Go
a
ahead.
lighter note. Today's gentleman's birthday, Alexander Dumas. Dumas. He wrote the Three Musketeers.
Musketeers. That name
Say
was
again.
familiar. I said, yeah, I knew that name was familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. His mother is of Haitian African descent,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and to know that he created these wonderful stories.
Yep.
Yeah, it was his birthday
It was
today
his
as well.
birthday. Okay. It's a good another piece to note in history there. Kimmy, I got a surprise for you. Are you ready for the surprise?
No.
Okay.
No.
Kimmy's like, when Griff says a surprise, it's like, I don't know if it's a good thing or not. The Grizz.
Hey, I'm just saying. I'm just saying no, man.
Okay, just say no. That's the patented answer to Griff.
I'm not ready.
Okay. Well, here's the first part, because I think you missed this last week, or maybe no, you missed this last week. So here, check it out. We've got our official Soul Citizen mug. Can you see that? Our own mug now.
Shame.
Okay. I know it's a shameful
Shame.
plug, but hey, listen, let me tell you something. We had somebody drop in last week. STL Youngblood Pap jumped in last week. He said, "Brother, plug it. Tell them all about it." So I'm taking
Oh my
his
God.
advice. The second piece, though, is this right here. Look, can you see? Let me see if I can stand up a
Oh
little bit.
God.
There we go. Look at that. Oh, is that the right
Oh
side? There.
God.
There's that. There it is. So we're going to be
Oh
having these
God.
Soul Citizen shirts now. We've got Soul Citizen shirts. Now, see, this is easy for Kimmy to say because we have to pay for stuff for this show. So I have to find ways to generate money for the show. And our hey,
Shame.
you know what though, Kimmy? We've been very fortunate. We have
Shame.
had no, it's not a shame. Check it out. We've had 40 people subscribe to us, and because of that, we gave away a talon. So we said that any monies that came in that were for that people donated into the show, we would turn right back around and give back to the community. So I'm not feeling shameful about that because the money's not going into my pocket. What it is doing is paying for the streaming service, and it's paying for the ships that we want to give back to the community. And hopefully we'll get to a place where we can give back a ship every week. That would be so awesome, especially for new people coming into the game. So yeah, if you guys want to support us, we have a Patreon page. Of course, you can subscribe through here. Patreon is better because, of course, y'all know Twitch takes out a big chunk of the money. But if this is convenient in the way you want to go, hey, we appreciate that anyway. Okay, so let's jump into it because we got some good stuff. Kimmy, I was so excited. You and I talked about this 2 weeks ago, and I don't know if we were just being prophetic with CIG or
Feeling it in my
not.
bones, man.
But we talked about one of these subjects last week, and it was the subject that's the second part of ISC. Have you seen ISC yet? Because if you haven't seen it yet, I wanted you to be surprised.
Yes, I have.
Oh, you have. So you saw what the second part was about. And we had talked
Yes.
about this coming into the game. I'd never expected it to happen this soon, but I am so pumped up for this. So if you guys want to join us on the show, click on the link. You can come in and talk to us. But we're going to look at ISC. And if you got some thoughts about ISC this week, yes, Mr. Squarepeg, you're absolutely right. ISC was awesome this week. So let's jump into it and take a look at it. Everybody get your little drink or something because it's going to be a few minutes. It's like 10 minutes. It's not very long, 11 minutes long.
So in Star Citizen, there's a lot of cool places to visit. But traveling between those places in space and such, maybe it gets a little bit flat and boring, and maybe that's what it's like in real life. But we want to make a really, really cool experience here, and I think we can make it look a lot nicer through spacescaping. So this is a child gas cloud. This one spawns with some asteroids, and this is basically one of the ways we're going to add depth to different locations in Stanton. The way these are created are through a process in Houdini that I've been using, and basically I can just try and make a simulation, play around with it, try and see what looks nice, and then I'll try and bring it into engine. Once it's an engine, then I can start lighting this guy up and creating some interesting areas all around it. The reasons why there are some dark areas and some lighter areas of this gas cloud is because it's gas particles, right? So the hotter or maybe more intense gas will light up a little bit more, and the darker gas will just pretty much give some shadows and occlusion around here. So the red stuff that you can probably see along the outskirts here, it's the new space dust, and it's pretty much being lit up by a light leak color that comes from the properties of the gas cloud. And so the sun will pierce light through the cloud, and then it'll tint it a specific color. So that's what it's doing to the particles right now as I'm moving towards it. But we can see it a little bit more obviously if we zoom into an asteroid here. It has this little bit of a red tint on it because the gas cloud starts as generally a bluish color, light bluish, but it has a light leak color that is orange. And so when the light pierces through it, it gets more and more of that tint added onto the objects around it. So this is one of the gas cloud childs that we have right now. But if there's a child, there must always be a parent. So if we zoom out, and we'll speed up a lot here, this is its parent. And this guy is quite massive. So it has several children within it. So I know where a second one is here. So here's another child on the opposite side of the cloud. It's a very similar scale to the one we were just at. And it gives you a very similar amount of depth and feel, but it's lit in a completely different way. Maybe it looks a little bit more aggressive, and it gives off a cool feel like that. So with play spaces, generally you'll spend most of your time in these child VDBs, and then you'll do your quantum traveling or even flying at SEM speeds from one to another. But something like this would be a quantum travel to your other child or multiple other children. And so I really wanted to at least test here in this setup what I've got here and see if quantum traveling through this really nice, maybe angelic, bright area would be an interesting feat. So throughout this, I've been moving very, very fast, probably faster than what you can quantum travel at. So it is generally really hard to tell what scale we're at right now. But if I go down to this guy, this little child here, and you can see your asteroids, you can see the whole thing. But maybe what we can do is turn on some planets for scale. So right here, this is a sphere, there's scale of yellow. So it's very close to the scale of a moon here, this child itself. But we can scale up a little bit. Here's the size of Hurston.
I want to stop here because there's a lot of stuff that they take in on this. I want to stop because there's a lot they take on here. Kimmy, I want to get some feedback on you too. You know, the first time we saw some of this gas stuff was in relation to the coil back in the day at CitizenCon, and when we saw that, it was immense. I mean, that thing was monstrous, and they had alluded to the fact
Chapter
that
8.
They would find out ways to bring this into the game. What do you think now? Because I think this goes back to something that you talked to a few weeks back. It might have been on Soul Citizens, where we were talking about that they want to be able to fill out the Stanton system, even though we're moving into,
Pyro.
our Pyro. That there's still more to come.
Yes.
Give me some thoughts on this in relation to these clouds and stuff.
Well, with the advent, as you know, Griff, we talked about this too, right?
Mhm.
With the flight sim that's out there now, and we see that cloud tech, and it prompted SIG to answer to that. But we know that in order for Stanton to be finished, they have to create that gas cloud of Stanton. And all the gas clouds, because it's going to be prevalent to how we do fuel scooping and such things like that. But then also we need that for the atmosphere when it comes to us having the flight model when
Mhm.
when you're talking about flying in atmosphere and then using that as a sense of strategy as well, hiding in between the clouds and such. But then I love what they're doing with the cloud tech because I have this term that I call recyclable tech.
Mhm.
They can turn this into nebulas. They can turn this
Right.
into the clouds,
Mhm.
gas tech. So
Mhm.
it's good to see them making that progress, and then now they're comfortable with showing it and getting it into a state. And as we all know, this state, as we've seen it shown here, is probably way ahead of its progress.
Right. Right. And to your point, I think this is one of the reasons why we have to be real careful when we're watching CIG develop stuff, that a lot of times something will come out and people say, oh, CIG needs to be doing that. They need to be thinking about that. And the reality of it is, in the industry, believe me, there are people that talk all the time about what's being developed with who and who's working on what. So even there are some things that are kept under the radar. Because we saw the Coil a long time ago, they were working on this. And I remember, Kimmy, you and I were talking when MS Flight Simulator came out this past week. We were talking about how great the clouds looked. But now we
Yes.
go in here and look at what they're doing here. And this is, man, this is on a galactic level, what we
Yes.
were seeing.
Universal.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. And
Exactly.
and I appreciate the
Good
fact that
point.
you mentioned that this same tech, because I didn't think about that. I've only thought about the clouds in relation to Crusader. I've thought about it in relationship to like being out in space, a nebula. But you're right, even something as simple as planetary atmospheric clouds. This is all tied in when it's all
Yeah.
said and done. Absolutely, absolutely right. That's good stuff. Jump back in.
Slightly bigger, not too bad. And here's the size of Crusader. And we have that compared to the parent. The parent is even larger than that. So I think there's a lot of space that we can use around here to add extra little depths, little children, even though that sounds funny to say, little child gas clouds all around the parent here, and it can hold them as a home.
As work continues adapting the gas cloud tech created for Squadron 42 to use throughout Stanton and beyond, the actor feature team is busy adding further iteration on features like force reactions, which not only aim to provide a realistic and visceral sense to being hit by just about anything in the Star Citizen universe, but also give reason to all those seats in the bellies of dropships when exterior forces begin transferring to those within.
Okay, now I got to stop here because this is the thing that we
Yeah.
had talked about before, and I'd said there was a trailer that CIG put out years ago about Star Citizen where there was a guy walking through the cargo area of a constellation, a Connie. He's up on
Yeah.
that upper walkway, and the
Cargo
ship,
area.
right, the ship gets hit from the side, and we see this shock wave come through, and he falls. He stumbles down and falls. And you and I had
Yes.
just had this conversation saying, man, I wonder when they're going to put something in like that because it'll be so awesome. And lo and
Yeah.
behold,
I
within a
mentioned
couple of
that.
weeks, boom, we're about to look at it. They've taken it to another level in a way that I've never seen. Have you ever seen this type of thing in any other game, Kimmy, where there's actually physics involved with? I mean, I've seen people get
No.
not to this degree. I've seen some stuff where
No.
people get blown.
Only something like scripted, right?
Yeah.
It's part of the action sequence, but
Mm-hmm.
not as far as the actual gameplay. No.
Mm. Okay. Okay. So here again, CIG may be. Listen, guys, if you guys have seen something similar in the game, I have not played every game there is, so I'm not going to be the authority on saying whether this is in other games. But out of the games I've played, and as Kimmy just said, what he's seen, we haven't seen anybody take this type of physics to this level when it comes to impact. So, yeah, let's see what they got to
Technical.
say about this. I know Tech Mars will be the comedian tonight. Again, if you guys want to jump in and ask us any questions or jump into the conversation, hey, hit that Discord link and just come on in the room with us.
So force reactions, this time around we're just adding a little more layers to the game. It's going to give you more immersion. I think if you're just adding to what Star Citizen is. So the big additions on 3.11 is the knockdown and seeing the reactions in the ship. When you work on any feature, you need a good testing ground, like something a little bit simpler, where there's less noise than say loading into the full PU experience every time. But it also allows us to really dial in on all the different edge cases, all the different scenarios. With forced reactions, we've got Sam, and Sam's really sort of taken the whole test level to heart and built like an amusement park of different rides you can go on to test all the different forced reactions aspects. And this is great because it allows you to have tons of fun, first of all, and if you have fun when you make a feature, it's going to be a better feature.
Hello, I'm Samuel Joyce. I'm a technical designer on Star Citizen. So let me jump into the editor and show you what that's all about. One of the force reactions that we're working on is called twitch, where the player will be hit by a bullet and their body will react in a certain way, depending on how far away they are being shot. And how far they are depends on how strong the impact will be. So when you're being hit by an automatic weapon, you'll really feel that impact. Similarly, if you're being shot by a rifle, the rifles generate a lot more impact, which means you're going to get a much more severe reaction. When you get hit by a shotgun from far away, you'll get peppered by many pellets, and the more pellets you get hit by, the more of an impulse that's generated, meaning your camera is going to shake more. However, if you walk up to the shotgun and get shot point blank, suddenly you get knocked down, and now you have a chance to shoot your enemy. When you're in the field battle, you're going to be shot by rockets. Of course, we've got God mode in this instance.
What I was going to say was in relation to this impact thing, the thing that really stuck with me the most, beyond just the fact of knowing that you're being hit, other than if you don't hear it audibly, you're physically being moved. I thought about the fact that what is this going to do when you're aiming at somebody and you're being hit? So now your aim is going to be thrown off. You know what I mean? And so I have to kind of wonder, this impact thing is going to add another dimension. And they show the different rifles, like they show a rifle, shotgun, right? All these different things.
Yes.
I'm really curious to see how that's going to impact, FPS PvP playing now.
Hey, Griff, you know what that means?
What's that, buddy?
This is not COD. This is not COD.
Ooh.
And and here's the realization: if someone gets the drop on you,
that's it. Hey,
get the drop on them.
Yeah.
I don't care what your skill set is as far as FPS. You get the drop on someone,
take advantage of it, right?
See ya.
I didn't even think about it from that perspective. You're absolutely right. It's not COD. And definitely, if you are not the greatest FPS person, if you get that chance, that off balance thing lends it towards you now, where you get some advantage if you're getting those first shots in. That's a really, really good point. Really good point.
Stealth.
So when you get hit by the rockets, you kind of like fly sideways. So what I'm going to do next is set up the force reactions to always play a knockdown whenever I'm shot by a pistol. So we see the most accurate representation of being blasted by a shotgun. What this big green square is for testing our force reactions. So for example, if I increase the force to about 60, we're going to get a really small little nudge which will knock us down and we'll barely go anywhere. And if we up the force a bit more, we should start going about 1.5 meters forward. So the furthest that we want you to be able to fall when you have an explosion go off behind you is about 3 meters. So this little yellow line helps us measure that. One of the things we want to be wary of when you're getting knocked down is when you get knocked down from a great height, what's the character going to do as he's falling? The kinds of issues that we'd be looking at would be just the general animation flow and being able to see if we got enough frames in each little area without it looking clunky, and make sure it's smooth. As you saw there, just as the explosion went off, my camera shaked a little bit. There's a little example of what the grenade explosion's pressure is going to do to the character if you're not quite in the blast zone. So here's a grenade where I haven't been able to get out of the way, but it affects both of us. Next up, I'm going to show you AI twitches. So once this guy knows about our little buddy over there.
Someone tried to blast me! Dig in! We've got this!
Some of the reactions that you could see, I can trigger them myself.
Shit! Over here!
when he's being shot, he'll be hit by this thing. So we've just gone to the ship hangar test level where I can spawn in any of the ships that I need to test in. So today we're going to look at the Andromeda. If I just teleport to the seat, and then we can get out. What I'm going to get this to do now is we're going to get the AI to fly my ship for me. And what we're going to see is we're going to see your character's going to start leaning depending on the g-forces of the ship. So right now we're flying directly upwards. What I'm going to do now is ask a Andromeda to ram the ship.
Sometimes I feel sorry for these guys. We just keep knocking them off the screen all the time. Yes, to wrap up, I would say this release is gonna be one big new push on the force reactions. The knockdowns, for me especially, is a new feature that really adds a different dimension to the game. But this is by no means the end of it. We're gonna keep iterating on it. We're gonna keep adding more types of reactions, balance it, and obviously this is where a lot of player feedback is gonna be useful. Hope you guys really enjoy what we put out there. Get your feedback back to us, and trust us to keep working on it and getting it dialed in where everyone is really happy with it.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that gas clouds can be used to make some of the areas between points of interest more interesting themselves. That it can be just as much fun building test levels for developers as it is making game levels for players. And that when the captain turns on the fasten seatbelt light, you better move around the cabin at your own risk. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you next week.
When things are put in the game, Chris has a vision that it's going to be implemented in some way. We joked around about the food courts when everybody was barking about food and people were surprised about having to eat food. And we're like, have you guys not been running around and seeing all these food stations everywhere? You know what I mean? And so we see all these ships with harnesses and all this other stuff. And I think we've just kind of ignored it. We've stood on the side and not paid attention. But now we're seeing a purpose.
You've said this all the time, Griff. A couple of weeks ago, you said this stuff, the things we see, they're hints, but they're not hints.
Mm-hmm.
It's to say that Chris is going to put it in the game. You kept coming with that weeks back about these little iterations of things that he's doing. He's not just doing it for his health. He's saying, or he's letting you know, this is part of the game. So pay attention. It's about the details with these guys, and you mentioned that.
And I get where some of it comes from, because most games we do play, if we see stuff around the space, if it's not integral to our final goal, we don't, it's just decoration. It's to make the room look like somebody's. If it's a house, we don't expect to be able to sit in every chair or be able to pick up every candlestick. You know what I mean? Because if it's got nothing to do with the mission, we could care less.
True.
But again, I'm thinking, because I remember the first time I got into a Starfarer and I went into that cargo area and I saw there were jump seats back there. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. They got jump seats back here in the back, the Cutlass jump seats in the back, right? And I'm like, okay, there's something to this, because he keeps putting these jump seats in the exit areas of these ships. So now, if you've got a platoon or a group of people or a squad of people, they've got to be back there secure, unless they want to stand up and take the risk of, especially during a combat fight. And God only knows if they're going to add physics with movement, if the ship is rotating quickly or anything else. I know that would be kind of difficult because of the gravity thing, but I'd like to see it that you can actually take damage if you get knocked down in a ship.
Like I said, Griff, it's the further iterations that I'm seeing is when we're looking at, we're inside those containers, which could be a ship. So imagine getting tossed around, but then eventually you're going to see types of damage where the containers are actually breached,
Mhm.
and then you're having that interaction between the two atmospheres, and then you're being pulled out. So
Right.
you're ragdolled, and if you're not in your seat, you're getting ragdolled out to
Yes.
the vacuum.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
he said further iterations that's coming.
You're right. And I remember, I don't remember how many Citizen Cons back that was when they first showed us that, when they punched a hole in the wall and we saw it sucking everything out into, the air and
Yes.
everything. I didn't even think about that in relation to this, but you're right. If you aren't
Yeah.
strapped down, man, you're going to have a serious headache when you hit that bulkhead. That's for sure. So,
Yeah.
yeah, cargo nets in the Valk. Yeah,
Remember the
decorations.
punching and you get hit and you get
Yeah,
concussed?
yeah, yes, absolutely.
All of it is coming together.
Yeah. And they said that the furthest you can get knocked down is 3 meters. So that's like 9 feet. That's a pretty good knockback,
So
depending
that's
the
either
explosion or
a
something.
good, a nice, right there in the center of a radius of a grenade, or
Yeah.
a slap from a Yeti.
Yeah.
Which
Or
one?
I'll equate it to a Bruce Lee kick, flying jump kick. But yeah, the Yeti. I do like your idea of that Luke Skywalker snow thing, knocking you across the room. I agree with you.
Oh yeah,
That would be rather cool to see
yeah,
happen. So okay.
yeah.
All right.
We
Oh yeah, I just lost my video for a second here with Kimmy. Okay, so let's get ready to jump into our next piece here. Now today we did a ask calling all devs. It wasn't very long, which was good because guys, this is one of those examples of a calling all devs, and nothing against the developers because these guys are not TV personalities, right? So don't want to put a lot of weight on them. But this is one of those shows where they had some guys that, their charisma was not necessarily as great as me and Kimmy's. So it takes a little bit to listen to these guys because these guys are just pretty much eggheads into what they do. But they talk about core tech. And,
yes,
Kimmy, let me talk about core tech just a little bit. Because I think when most of us look at the roadmap, most people look at the first thing they look at is what ships are coming out, right? Maybe who's the new mission givers and what guns they're working on, right? And core tech is always at the very bottom. But I think
yes.
today it really reminded me
Unsung
of
heroes.
how important, there you go, how important core tech is. Because guys, basically core tech is saying, here's the foundation of the game. All that other stuff is the icing on the cake. But if
Love the
core
guy.
tech's not together, then everything else that they want to work on, is for naught. So today, Kimmy's two subjects, his favorite subjects, iCache
Oh yes,
and server meshing. This was the big subject today. So
and global persistence.
and global persistence, yes, which comes out of those two elements. I mean, Kimmy always reminds us
Oh,
about
it's
how
huge.
important those two elements are to the game, and I think that people miss that. Every once in a while we hear them drop that phrase, but tonight these guys talk about how important this stuff is in the game. So let's jump into it. Like I said, it's going to take a little bit of listening. Don't hang in there. I know it's going to be a tough listen, but we're going to try to comment. And again, if you guys want to jump into our chat, use the Discord link and come in and talk with us. If you got questions or comments about either ISC or calling all devs. Here we go.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Calling All Devs, our question and answer series where we take questions from you, the Star Citizens themselves, and pose them directly to our developers over video conferencing. On this week's show, we are tackling some of the most voted up and requested topics from the community. We are talking core tech. We're going to be talking iCache, we're going to be talking global persistence, and then we're going to be talking about server meshing in the end. So to get us started, we are here with Chad McKinney. Chad, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. Now we are coming to you for this because you are part of a team of folks who work across the studios across the world, who are all heavily invested in this core tech that will allow us to expand Star Citizen to the size and the scope that we all want it to be. So basically, let's just start the conversation. Talk to us about iCache.
Yeah, iCache is effectively kind of shorthand for a collection of services that are interfacing with the game servers and backend databases to allow us to both write out and query data efficiently and in a fault-tolerant way. So this is really important because right now, the way the servers are working, they're using an in-memory kind of database for this global data. Ultimately, that's not feasible. We need to build it out so that things can work in a mesh in order for that to happen, we need to actually write this out into a place that all the servers can look at it and agree on what the state of the world is. So the iCache is our solution to make that access scalable. And right now, the iCache infrastructure on the back end is actually largely done, and it's now at the point where game side, we're hooking up our game code in order to correctly write out the data efficiently, query the data efficiently, as well as fix up some of the game code systems that had previously maybe had some assumptions that don't work correctly within the new context. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. Effectively, what we're trying to do is cache certain data that we know that we need, and this prevents us from hitting the database, which is a more expensive access. So by caching it, we're optimizing our access, and we're also able to build in a certain amount of fault tolerance in the system through various techniques like duplication and regeneration. So this gives us fast access for the information that we need when we need it. And then at the same time, on the game side, okay, I just lost my train of thought, I'm sorry.
Take two.
So yeah, it's effectively like you mentioned, like the difference between having a hard disk where the data is stored for long-term storage, that's like more permanent, and your RAM that it kind of effectively gives you faster access that you're happier to write to, but you know that it's temporary. So the iCache storage is storage that's not meant to actually capture and define the state of the world, but rather is an intermediary between the final state of the world, which is the actual database. So it's that's a good analogy.
So you did say earlier that we're pretty much finished. I want to get a little more clarity on that. That doesn't mean. What does finished mean?
Sure. So I think to clarify here, what I'm talking about is that the particular services that compose the infrastructure on the back end for the iCache framework is largely written. So the backend engineers have written it, they've tested it. The APIs have all been negotiated. So we have to define not only how the service works, but also like how it communicates with the game server. We've done all that work. We've built out the structure of the data, how the database is laid out, all that's done. And so now it's taking the system that we have and actually connecting it to the game itself. Yeah, and to be clear, like we have known for a long time that we're going in this direction. So on the game code side, the changes that are happening right now aren't normally transformative or refactors or anything like this. There's smaller sets of changes just to make sure that we have followed all the best practices all over the place, and that things are persisting correctly, and that the querying mechanisms that we're using use the new API. So there's some small changes as far as like the API that you use to query data. There's some new concepts that we've introduced specifically to help leverage in order that, and specifically to allow us to support things like physicalized inventory and the new kind of cargo changes that we're going to support that are also going to be working with physicalized inventory. So we have been going in this direction, but we need to do some final work on the game code in order to make it operate correctly. But also we need to make the fundamental querying mechanisms and physicalized inventory infrastructure on the game side to support the game systems on top of them.
So it sounds like because we've known we were working towards this, we've already worked on a lot of precursors. We've already put our proverbial ducks in a row.
We've been heading in this direction for actually years. So whenever we started on client-side streaming, we know at that point, actually before that we would be ending up here, and then the ultimate destination is, spoiler alert, later, server meshing. So I think we've made tremendous progress, and we've done some rather transformative changes in some of the game, like underlying game engine code that I think is amazing. So I think that we've made a lot of progress. I want to say that we're closer to the end than the beginning is how I would put it.
I think that's fair and safe to say. I appreciate that. And when iCache comes online, I know it's a stepping stone towards these other things we're going to talk about, but what kind of immediate impact would it have for the players? Like, how will the players recognize when iCache is in and working? How does their experience change?
Sure. So I would say that some of the most apparent changes that will come about is that we're going to have both a combination of better response on server and service queries for this kind of persistent data, as well as better fault tolerance and scalability. What that will like directly manifest as all the different times in the game where you end up interacting with these databases, which is constantly. It'll be things like when you spawn a ship, whenever you change your loadout, so your helmet or your armor, whenever you change something about your vehicles, whenever you purchase something, whenever you deal with cargo. There's all these places in the game where you're interacting with the persistent state of the game. And in all those places, right now we're struggling both with scaling to support the number of players that we want, especially whenever we have like a big event or new release. We're really pushing on the current infrastructure that we have. But on top of it, it'll make it more fault tolerant so that whenever inevitably something goes wrong, the game just doesn't fall over. With the current, what we call a monolithic P cache that we have, if that service goes down, that's just it for all persistence queries for the entire, not just server, but all the servers. So this is clearly, not the right place to be. But this new set of services addresses that by not putting all your eggs in one basket, as it were, and allowing for a multiplicity of handlers to be able to react to any request.
So iCache.
iCache.
Okay. So the next step beyond iCache in these pillars is it's kind of server meshing and global persistence, but for the sake of this conversation, we'll move.
Thank you. For the sake of our sanity, we're going to cover just a little bit of what was talked about. We don't want to treat you guys like we're mansplaining, like you couldn't figure it out. But some folks said even in our chat that they watched this like 2 or 3 times and it finally started to sink in. And I guess one of the shorter ways to look at this is he's talking about how right now we when we go on a server, there are 50 of us on a server. That server is tracking everything that we do. And what iCache will ultimately do would be work similar to how RAM would work. There would be certain things that would go into the iCache while we're playing, and they'll allocate what those things are based upon certain aspects of the game, so that there's not such a heavy draw on the servers. It takes a lot of pressure off the servers, in fact. And it also retains that information so that it can, when you log out of the game, that information will be placed back into the server so that they don't lose things. They even talked about if the servers were to crash, they could start retaining certain bits of information where, like right now, everything's on the server. And you guys know sometimes when we have a server crash, sometimes you lose stuff or you were doing something, whatever you were doing didn't happen, whatever the case may be. So, Kimmy, any thoughts on that about the iCache piece that you want to toss in before we kind of go into this next part?
Oh, definitely. It's a dynamic. Whenever you do things in the verse and it happens quickly, dynamically, and those missions, iCache can handle that. And so it's a quick, fast, and dirty way of capturing data and saving it instantly and retaining it to allow you to keep playing things out.
Right.
And then, did he ever mention global persistence?
That's what they're going to go into now. That's why I wanted to get the iCache first.
So
out of the way
right there,
first.
yeah. So iCache is definitely for whatever you do, your loadouts. It's going to hold that. How many bullets you have. It's going to maintain all that stuff.
That's good stuff.
Quick and fast.
Yep. Okay, here we go.
Move one in front of the other here. Let's talk global persistence. Once we have iCache, how does that take us to global persistence?
Right. So global persistence is something that is supported now that we have this iCache framework. What it means is that we're going to start writing out data about the state of the world that does not include player account data. Previously, we would only store data that was relevant to a particular player's account, things like their ships, their weapons, their item port attachments. Perhaps you stole something from somebody, we'll store that, but that's where it stops.
Yeah.
We want to do more though. The game that we envision is this incredibly high fidelity, high persistent world where your actions matter, you have an impact on the world. Well, the only way to make that work is to actually store out the state of those changes and to store out the state of the world itself. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've been calling global persistence. So the reason why we haven't done this to date, though, is that the amount of data that we're talking about is like a magnitude or two more. It's much, much more data. And if we tried to write that out with the current system, it would just cough over and die. It would not go well. So iCache gives us the scalability to actually deal with that scale of data. But on top of that, it's a requirement to support server meshing. But before we get to server meshing, global persistence really is, in my opinion, a feature in and of itself, and it's part of the vision of the ultimate version of Star Citizen. So to me, it was very important that we make sure that we execute on this, that we're finding all the places in the game that we want to support this kind of persistent state, and make sure that we update all the game systems to work accordingly. So we actually have a version of global persistence right now. It's just not apparent to players, because when they log out of a server and log back in, they'll go into a different server instance often, and they'll see something different. And if the server that they're on crashes and recovers, the history that it had is gone. So we actually are maintaining much of this data, but it's just not in a way that players will really ever tangibly see. And where we're going is making it more permanent, and on top of that, recoverable. Gotcha. So that as you get into the game, we're going to be able to expand out using server meshing the number of players within effectively an instance, or what we'll start calling a shard. And as that expands, you'll be playing more and more in effectively the same kind of world line or set of history. And your experience will be that you will see you and your playgroups, your effects on the world become more permanent. And the idea is that for all the players in the game, they end up seeing a version of the game that is effectively permanent for them. It is from the time they start playing the game to the time that they end, everything is there, right? And to be clear, though, there are going to be sets of gameplay around, maybe dynamic events in the game that happen, or there will be places in the game where maybe there's more maintenance that will recover some of the broken and messiness that accrues from all this player behavior. You can imagine that if you have maybe a military base or maybe a high traffic, like high cost neighborhood in like Area 18 or something like that, they're going to have more facilities in place to maintain it, to keep it clean and fixed up. Whereas maybe a seedier location, perhaps in pirate space, is going to, all the mess that's left around is going to stick around for a while.
At that point, we need to talk to Clive. We need to get the skinny on server meshing. So, Chad, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here on the show. You're always a pleasure to have on.
Thank you for having me.
All right, take care, man. All right, so costume change. It's the next day, and my next call is for, as promised, Clive Johnson. Clive, how you doing, man?
Hey, Jared. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking the call. We are talking...
You're saying Clive worked on the bingle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, years ago,
yeah.
And it drove him nuts.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Would you mind talking a little bit about what you said earlier? Because you made a comment here, and you talked about how that's going to become the global persistence will become like the hard drive. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit so everybody kind of get it?
Yeah. So as Chad elaborated on that, there's certain things that are going to be a part of the universe that they're going to retain. Things on the iCache side, as I said, it's kind of like, think of it of partitioning your data, and you have certain things separated. So iCache is dealing with us, but the global persistence is dealing with things that's in the verse itself. Maybe it's the weather and how that weather works. Maybe it's the way that the sun is setting. Maybe in the future, rotating planets could be a part of global persistence. The creatures, they may hand that off into the global persistence because they're going to exist, and there's going to be a way that they generate and how they go about their 24-hour cycles. So it's separate, but it's on a higher level, or they set hierarchy. So everything iCache is with us. Global persistence is definitely your persistent universe, and those changes in the persistent universe. It's like, remember when they say quantum jumps will decay and you have to find them over again? And then what Tony Zorvek alluded to, the quanta, where you have veins of gold that's in one area, and then until you take it all away, it's going to be there to an extent. And even Chris said, you take that cup, it's going to be there, but to an extent. They're going to do some cleanup eventually, but globally, they'll be able to manage things and keep things in a natural life cycle with the PU.
And to Quinn's point, Quinn, we don't mean separate like that. We're just saying that each one of these is integral. They all work together. The server meshing will be, iCache will be, global persistence will all work together. But what they are doing is separating some things that
a
have all been
hierarchy.
running off of one server. I mean, well, just off the servers only. As he mentioned earlier,
Yes.
iCache is going to create this, like he said, he equated it to like what RAM is to a computer with hardware.
Yes.
So they all work together. Absolutely right.
It's not physically separated, but for
Yep.
those reasons,
Yep, they all work
it
together.
will allow them to optimize things and manage it.
And this is important for the expansion of the universe, right? And Kimmy, we've said this before. And
But
CIG
your
is
mic
saying-
died.
oh, I'm
Griff.
sorry. Guys,
Your
forgive me.
mic.
Whenever I click on a different screen, I lose my even though I'm supposed to have Discord, it's supposed to be always going. What I was going to say is that all of this stuff is integral because and we've talked about this on the show, and CIG has too, that they have packed so much stuff into what's in the game right now that there's very little room
Yeah.
for them to keep adding. That's one of the reasons why we haven't seen Pyro.
Yes.
They've got to, and they keep saying this, these things have to happen so that they can start spreading things out, not just adding more players, but actually building on the universe. So that, as you mentioned, these things can be allocated differently. Because right now, you just can't keep
Right.
piling all this data onto one single server. It just can't happen. There's too much stuff being tracked at any given time, let alone persistence, right?
And see what Xquinn is saying is too broad. He's saying that iCache, it's not separate. But what do you categorize as iCache? What do you categorize as global persistence? That's what they're saying. There's categories, there's hierarchies that they're using to know what belongs to what, so they can optimize it and maintain it.
And that's why we said they all work together,
They do.
but
They will
they're
work
distinct,
together.
right? But
Yeah.
they are distinct things, and I think that's all he was just saying.
Yes.
That one works through the other one. Dibley says all of them working in concert is helpful for our expectations, to not look for one to be miracle. Exactly, that's a very, very good point, because they've still got to work through this tech. This is some brand new stuff,
Yes.
guys, that we haven't seen in any game so far. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes. As a reminder, thank you, Admiral, we appreciate that. Thank you. You guys, if you guys want to come into the chat, hey, come in and join us. That's what this is all about, so we don't have to read it all. We'd love to hear from you guys. Let's jump back in.
Core tech updates for Star Citizen. We just got done talking to Chad McKinney about server streaming and iCache and global persistence. And we are now coming to you for a little talk about something we like to call server meshing. So because every show is somebody's first show, and there might be folks who've joined the project who don't know what it is, what we're talking about, let's just start by introducing the idea of server meshing, what it is, and why we're pursuing it. And then we'll go for an update after that.
Okay, well, currently, when backers play the game, they connect to a server, and it's a single server holding up to 50 clients, running the entire simulation on that one server. That's going to be a severe limitation, because obviously there's a finite amount of processing available on that computer, so there's a finite number of clients that it can support.
Mm-hmm.
So as we want to extend the number of concurrent users, the number of active users in the same simulation at the same time, we need to split that simulation up over multiple servers. So the original idea is to have multiple servers running different parts of the simulation. So you might have a server running the game at Port Olisar, you might have a different server running the game at, say, Levski. And that's great, and they're completely independent. But the problem then becomes, how do you get from Port Olisar to Levski or back again if the simulations are running on different servers? So we need to connect the servers together. And what that basically means is we'll have all these servers running different parts of the simulation, and they will selectively choose which other servers to connect to, so that players can transition back and forth, or that they can share parts of the simulation together. And then they'll drop that connection when it's no longer needed, and they can make new connections with other servers.
All right. So now that we've reiterated for some, we've introduced others to the idea of server meshing. Where are we at right now in the process? I know we've got teams working on iCache, and global persistence is on the way, and both of those are absolutely necessary and crucial to server meshing, as we talked with Chad McKinney. But your team's not sitting there just waiting for them to finish their work. You guys are in progress now. Tell us what you're working on now.
Well, right now, we're working on a couple of things. We're working on getting the time synchronization correct, which probably doesn't sound very server mission related. But we've been aware for a while that there's been lag, rubber banding, and kind of desync issues present in the main game. And obviously, with all these servers connected to each other in the server mesh, that's going to make the problem worse. That's the thinking. So we kind of need to address it a bit now. We can't promise that we're going to completely solve it first go, but we're investigating the situation and trying to make as many improvements as we can. And a lot of the issues seem to come back to time synchronization between the client and the server. And in server meshing, just to remind everyone, servers will be connected to each other. So one server will be acting as a client of another and receiving updates from it. So they could too experience rubber banding and desyncs and so on. So we've got to try and make sure that clock synchronization is right. So it's not just about getting the clocks actually in sync. It's more fundamental than that. Some of the problems we found, and we're changing how the engine actually handles the concept of time, which sounds quite grand, maybe. But yeah, it's basically it's just fixing a load of bugs that have crept in over the years. It's quite tricky and it's quite detailed work, but yeah, we're getting through it. We're seeing some good results now. Hopefully that'll be done soon. And then yeah, we're also looking at getting two servers talking to each other, which may surprise some people that that's not the first thing that we did, but it kind of was, because obviously the first thing you try when you're trying to build server mesh, you just try and connect two servers together and you see what happens. And we weren't really expecting it to work, and we weren't too surprised when it didn't. But it was quite a useful exercise, and it showed kind of what didn't work and what we would have to change to make it work. So we kind of built those tasks out, and people are working through them right now. And we're getting pretty close to where we can give it another go and have a reasonable shot at the two servers actually being able to communicate. So the fundamental problem there is that the engine's based on the assumption that a server thinks it owns the game session, which with server meshing, obviously they're sharing the game session between them. So we've kind of got to make one server set up and it kind of has the game session, and then another server wants to join it and it goes, okay, yeah, you can share into it. You now have as much authority and ownership of this game session as I do. And it's a bit of a shift for how the game code and the network code thinks about game sessions and how everything relates to each other. So throughout the game code, well, throughout the engine, there's plenty of checks going. If this is a server, do something like this. If it's a client, do something like this. Which doesn't fit with kind of the server meshing model, where you've got an authoritative server, you've got a non-authoritative server, and you've got regular game clients. So all these kind of if statements were based on the assumption that you could only ever have one authoritative server. So they all needed to change. We're talking like thousands of locations in the code. So we kind of did an audit. We split that up into hundreds of tasks for people to look at. That got spread out across basically every team that has an engineer in it, and they've been working through it. But nearly at the end, there's a few stragglers left to do, but nearly at the end now, where they've changed it over to this new API that basically says, am I the machine that has authority over this entity? If I am, I can do it this way. If not, I'm supposed to do this instead. So that was a massive change, and that in itself is getting put out into the new builds, and you can't see any changes. And that's a good thing, because it shows that they're not breaking stuff by making these changes. So it's an early test. No, I think we're doing okay. So the idea was to try and get as many of the kind of the tasks, as much of the work done early, where it might have a knock-on to other teams. So like changing how other people write code to decide whether something should be handled authoritatively or not. How they might handle time, any of those kind of changes we want to do as early as possible. So from this point on, people are writing code the correct way, and we've got less to go back and kind of revisit.
Gotcha.
And because there's such a huge amount of code that's already been written, we were kind of expecting it to take a while for those changes to get worked through. So while that's going on, we, the network team, are kind of working on getting the servers connecting to each other. We've also done some other changes to like headless clients of all things to try and allow them to be used for automated testing, so that when we get these server meshes up and running, we can automatically test them rather than have QA try and fill these things out. So there's a lot of different tracks all kind of progressing in parallel, and we're making progress. It's not easy. Yeah, it's a lot to cover.
I think overall, it sounds like between the conversations with you and Chad that we're making some pretty good progress. We're generally happy with where we're at. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
No, I don't think so. Have I forgotten something? No, it's all good.
All right, well, that about does it for this episode of Calling All Devs. I want to give a very special thanks to Chad McKinney and to Clive Johnson for stepping outside their comfort zones a little bit and speaking with us very candidly about the progress of their work. It's not always the easiest thing to do, but we always appreciate it when they can. And then just one more word about iCache, server meshing, global persistence, all those things. Those are major signposts in the road of Star Citizen's development, but the work does not end there. While we're feeling very good about our progress, and as I think Chad probably put it best, we're closer to the end than we were to the beginning. We look forward to continuing to update you on the progress of not just these features, but all the features of Star Citizen, these ones and the ones beyond. So for Calling All Devs, I'm Jared Huckabee. Until next time.
All right, Kimmy, I'm gonna let you kick it off. What sticks out with you? Again, if anybody wants to join into the chat to talk about this is the time. Click on that link. You can come in and talk to me and Kimmy. Any questions you guys may have, this is a great time to do it. Kimmy, give me some feedback on what you saw.
Well, what I saw was the eye opener was them getting the timing right. Clive spoke on getting timing, getting the servers in sequence with their timing, and then setting sort of like an AI of communication between these servers, and knowing when they have to switch off to say I'm authority or I'm passive to you, and then you have some that are basically anchors that say, hey, I'm set, I'm rock solid here, I'm not changing, this is where I am. And then anything else beyond that, I may have to hand off data to whomever, and then they have the authority to. But for them to script that and get that written in where these work in concert, but then you have to compound that they have to be in sync, or not desync, but the timing, they have to work in concert so that we don't see that rubber banding on our end where they're not in sync together. So that's going to be a tall task, but he said they're making progress. They didn't expect it to work the first time out, but like he said, it was a learning experience, and they're going to keep grinding, and they pretty much have the foundational software in place. It's just them tweaking things and getting it up to snuff.
There was something he said in there that really resonated with me. He said that, he talked about how originally a client was designed to be the host, right? It was supposed to be the authority, but now they, as you mentioned, they have to do this sharing thing, and so there's this battle between, you can come on as the sharing computer, but now they have to share equally. Now, the thing that stuck with me, he said there are thousands of locations in the servers that they had to go back into to find where that type of command was for authority, and now change them all. And they said that they've done this demo with 2 computers where the first time, of course, they tried it, but they said they learned a lot from it, and now they're getting to the point now where those 2 computers are able to share that information, which was great. The other thing I want to touch on is something you said jokingly, but I know you were serious too. CIG, if you guys notice, if you're on their Twitter, they have been putting out every week, they're looking for engineers, and this explains why. Because he said that they've had to now put an engineer in every team that's working on the game.
Oh, yeah.
Because those engineers have to go into that particular area, no matter what that area is, and look for that code that makes a server become the dominant server, and now start making those changes so that these servers will
Yes.
be able to talk to each other. So I thought that was pretty interesting stuff. And now we're starting to see why. And people have been saying, tell us what the delay is, tell us why is it taking it so long. Well, now we're starting to find out why. Those of us who remember anything about the Pry engine and Crysis, this original engine was not made to do a lot of stuff that it now does now. They've had to go and do
No.
a lot of work to make this thing do simple things such as water, even if I'm remembering correctly, or something like that. So there's a lot of stuff that they're working on, basically. Like you said, they're always working hard on the game. Okay. Before we move on, anybody else got anything? Or Kimmy, do you have anything else in relation to this before we move on to the next thing? I know there was a lot to take in from Clive,
Yeah.
especially in that latter part, the information sharing. And it is something you have to sit there and listen to. We get it, guys, because he's just giving it to us straight. And a lot of times folks say, just give it to us straight. And then we say, well, we get bored
Right.
watching that.
Oh,
But
wait a minute. Too
Right,
many
right,
eggs
too
being
many-
cracked. I just want to say this, Grip. I just want to say this.
That's a good way to
all these eggshells on the floor.
That's a good way to, that's a
Oh,
good way to
damn.
put it. Yeah.
What the hell?
Put me back
Hey,
on
you wanna
ISC,
prove it,
man.
right?
Yeah,
You
put
want a
me back
big
on
ass arm.
ISC.
There you
Yeah,
go.
right. Yeah, really. What are you gonna say?
I just want to, before we move on, I don't want to say things that cause confusion, and the thing about the partitioning. And I'm going to put it in this context. Think of this: on the global persistent side, you go to a location where there's trees. That's global persistence. Okay, you get into a firefight, you have ballistics, and you're spraying bullets all over the place, and you leave the area. The victor wins, and those bullets, those shells, are still on the ground. So by it being persistence iCache, it's going to be there for a little bit, but it needs to go back to where it came from. Because imagine if everyone did that kind of situation and it's all over the place and it stays that way. It's basically what Chris said about the cup. And you go back, it's there for maybe about a week or two, but no one gets it. Automatically, it has to be pulled away. That's your iCache. But global persistence will accept it and know that it's there for a time being. And that's why I use the analogy of partitioning, but maybe it was a bad analogy, but it's separating of your data, making sure you have a separate understanding of that data and what it's designed for. So there's a certain lifespan on certain data, whereas global is like trees, grass, sun, planets, moons. It's not going anywhere. It's global persistence. Bullet shells, the hyper pins, the medic pins, the oxygen pins get thrown on the
Those things that
ground.
become changes.
It's going to be there for a little bit.
Right. The things that become changes in the universe. And he talked about the fact that this also helps deal with the speed of those things and the response of those things too. So I think your analogy about the cup thing was the real good one when Chris talked about that. You could have this stack of coffee mugs or whatever it is, but they'll be there for a while. But there's a certain point where it's going to move that stuff out because, as you said, we just can't keep stacking things in the universe. Those shells can't remain there 3 years later. That becomes a problem. And they said they'll set the time frames of what that is. We don't know what that's going to be, right? Yeah, that's what's coming. Okay. Well, listen, there was a lot of stuff that we covered this week, but both of them were really good. I really was impressed with the reaction stuff earlier. Definitely impressed with
that was great.
Tech. Yeah, hearing where they're at in Tech. We said
Cloud Tech.
Cloud Tech. Oh God, can't wait, right? Can't wait. Somebody actually said earlier that this is going to be great for pirates. It ain't going to be just good for pirates. It's going to be good for hiding from pirates.
You're right. It's going to be for runners who are trying to get away with the goods, man.
This is the throwback to, was it Star Trek Wrath of Khan when they go into the nebula?
Yes.
Right? I mean,
the nebula.
Yeah,
yes.
you can think that it's a good thing for a pirate, but it also becomes for that person you're going after. Hey, the pirate may have to watch out because you start equalizing things a little bit.
Yes.
I get your point.
If you have damage.
Yeah, I get your point, though. If you're talking about a pirate base or pirates hanging out there to ambush somebody, absolutely right. I get it. But it's an exciting piece of mechanic that we can see coming into the game. Last week, we announced that we're going to start doing something, and that's we're going to start highlighting some footage that people from the Star Citizens community have put together, machinima. And some of it's really, really good, guys.
Nice.
Some of it goes back several years. Last week, we showed one that was done by Rexzilla and his team called Black Vault Down. This
yeah.
week, we're going to show one that Kimmy and I were talking about earlier. Now, this is a real throwback, and some of you guys who've been around for a while may have seen it. It was done by Fiendish Feather, a group of people that are Star Citizen. I would call them legacy folks because they've been around for a while. Grokkeys, Meyer, several other people did the voice work behind it. But it was called Bulkheads. Well, Star Wars has their
Oh,
cinema
yeah.
called
I remember
Bucketheads,
them.
but theirs is called Bulkheads, and it was in several parts. So we're going to kind of cut through those. We're going to just show part one tonight. They're not very long, but they're very entertaining. And they, I forget how they got the modeling for this. There was somewhere or other that they were able to get the Star Citizen modeling, and then he would go in and actually create his own animations based around the Star Citizen modeling and universe. I have to go back and get the history on it, Kimmy, because I kind of forgotten how he did the technical side of this. But man, it is awesome stuff to see. So let's check
The
that
video
out
editing.
now.
Intruders detected. C deck, corridor 5. Bulkhead breach in progress. Good luck.
Okay, this is it, Brock. Are you ready?
Hell yeah. But, what if they come through another door?
You're joking, right?
Well, I mean, what if they just want us to think that they're gonna break through this door, but they go use another one instead?
Brock, Command just told us they were coming through this door.
Yeah, well, what if they're wrong? Or lying?
Are you serious? Yeah, you are. Okay, Brock, why? Why would Command lie to us?
I don't know. Maybe they're working with the pirates.
But there are Command.
That's what they'd want you to think if they were pirates.
Okay, Brock, listen to me. And listen to me real good. Command are not pirates. They're not against us, and they did not intentionally lose your laundry last Thursday. They definitely didn't try to assassinate you by planting a chicken bone in your soup last night. Now please, we're about to be attacked. If we could just concentrate on that door there for just like 1 single minute.
Okay, but it goes past that, doesn't it, King? Think about it and add everything together. First, there's the crew. Look at us! The cooks poisoned us half to death with salmonella the other day. And then remember when someone accidentally turned off the barriers on the flight deck and Jake and Trevor got blown into space? It's madness. Madness, I say!
Brock, just listen to yourself. I mean, it's like you're saying that the guy that put itching powder in your underwear is out to get you. It's just a prank. These are all coincidences. Maybe just a bit of bad luck or something.
But, I mean, what about that time that shipment of avocados fell over on Jerry? Faulty storage equipment, my ass. Or what about when those stock rifles backfired and blew up in the faces of those two grunts? Second-rate ammunition? Starting to see a pattern here.
Okay, fine, Brock, even if you have a point, we're gonna get blasted if they come through that door and we're not ready.
Hostiles down. Sweep the corridor. Tight pattern. Keep low and stick to the walls. Roger. Roger! Stop saying my name! Shut up, Roger.
Attention. Simulation terminated. Pirates win. Again. I repeat.
Oh,
simulation
look at the little
terminated.
babies taking a nap. Ugh, Brock, I should have you spaced out the airlock for this.
Yeah, if Command doesn't do it first.
Bulkheads! Are you two sleeping on the job again? You two had shields, and you didn't even manage to get one single shot off at the enemy? What are you gonna do in a pirate or a Vandal attack? No, wait, I know what you're gonna do. You'll die because you're useless. That there now. That's what we call a nice hole.
Good joke, mate. Really though. What's our target?
Did I sound like I was joking?
You thick, mate. It's a bloody Bengal. A UEE-controlled Bengal at that. I signed on this crew to make money, not go on a suicide mission.
Alright, you're new, so I'm gonna forget you said any of that. Listen, kid, that there is the Imperitiam, worst crew in the entire UEE. We could attack that whale in an Aurora with one rocket, no guns, and an on-fire power plant, and we'd probably come out on top. Trust me, they're harmless. Enough chatter, gentlemen. It's time to man the turrets, arm the torpedoes, warm up the shields, stoke the fire, and put on the kettle. We've got some Marines to kill, and we better get it done before the tea gets cold.
I'm sorry, gang. I'm sorry, gang. I hit the wrong button there. But that was the Bulkheads, and this was definitely a throwback for those of you guys who remember this. They started this back in 2016, and every few months they would put out a new one, and this one was the very first one. It was our introduction. I think there was only maybe one or two other people that I saw do some machinima prior to this. So if you guys haven't seen it, definitely take a look at it. We're going to show more episodes of it each week. So this was just part one. I don't remember how many of these. Fast Cart, I know you're in. Maybe you remember how many of these they did, but they did quite a few of them. I want to say like maybe 6 of them, 6 to 8 of them, if I'm remembering correctly.
I was going to say 7.
Yeah. What did you think, Kimmy, about the artwork? Because we saw some uniforms that look like they're in the game now, and then there was like the jumpsuits that the spacesuits that the two guys that were talking had on that looked a little bit different than we have now, right?
Yeah, very similar to those suits. When it was subscribers had the red, I forget the name of it, but it was the red suit. It was similar to that with the helmet. Looked very similar to that. But
and this was also before we had facial stuff too, because if you notice, all we had was the mirror look. We didn't know what faces looked like back then, right?
Yes.
That was totally different as well. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed that. They were in pajamas, Pickle. They did look like pajamas, didn't they? They actually did look like
onesies.
Onesies, yeah, onesies. Well, listen, we really want to tell you guys thank you for hanging out with us tonight. We've pretty much hit it. We didn't get any guests. This is the first week nobody dared come in with us, and we were hoping that somebody would come in with us. I know, Admiral, you've been in several weeks, and I know you were trying to encourage folks. And I know this is new and different for folks to come in and talk live. But again, we invite you guys to be able to do that. If you ever want to join us in the game, you're always welcome to do that. Let's see.
I kind of think, Griff, that the topics that came along this week answered a lot of questions.
Yep.
And it kind of I felt as though it satisfied a lot of the backers in that regards to content that they were craving or looking for. It answered a lot of questions.
That's probably very true. I know that for me, a lot of what I heard yesterday and today's information was just good. I was very happy with it. If you don't like the egghead stuff, like you were saying, Kimmy, earlier, if you don't want to have the 8-layer omelet, then Thursday's show is the one to see. But if you want to go deep, if you're ready to go down the rabbit hole, then Friday's show was the one to see. And they both gave us really, really good information. Someone had asked earlier about 3.11. When will it come out? All we can say is, according to the roadmap, it's supposed to be at the end of September. I know that's 30 days away, guys, believe it or not. We know they were a little bit behind with 310, but that does not mean that they will not still be pushing to meet that quarter, because we still have 312, which comes out in December. So they've got to be careful about getting too far behind. Even though they were working on 310, remember there's another group that was working on 311. So let's hope that that staggered piece will give us some type of guarantee that late September at the very latest, that it would be with Evocati by the end of the month. And then hopefully during October, everybody else will start seeing it come in. So yeah. Kimmy, you got anything? Oh, please tell people, or if you got anything else to say, go ahead and tell us where they can find you.
You got to look at the content that they have on the roadmap as well. That's a factor too. If it's something if it's really tech heavy, or does it require multiple teams to get this done? So that's to be considered as well.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Okay, we are going to pull it together and wrap it up. Kimmy, tell people where they can see you, find you, the whole 9 yards, please.
Oh man, I'm just getting back, so I'm working my way towards getting my schedule back on. But you can catch me at Kimmy65 on Twitch, and I'll stream. I'll do loadouts for if you want to do dual sticks, HOTAS setups. I'll talk about that. I'll do some flying around, some missions, cool music, and just general chat about the game and such. So just hang out if you want to. I'm there. For your mic, Griff.
I don't know what it is with me tonight. This is just, you know what? I'm just, the Chadwick Boseman thing is messed
usually
up my
be me,
head.
right?
The Chadwick Boseman thing has just messed my head up today. Yes, Kimmy answers a lot of good questions, guys. So, definitely he's always happy to share. This is his passion. He loves doing this. You can see me here. You can see Kimmy here too. This week coming up, by the way,
Yeah.
this Sunday is going to be our Soul Citizen show Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to be talking about theaters of war. And our special guest is going to be Eris from Relay. He's going to be on the show. Colossal and Fast Cart. They're going to be here, but we definitely
Nice.
want to, if you guys want to get some information about theaters of war, if you got a chance to play it when you were at CitizenCon, or if you've just seen something, they're going to go into some detail. Of course, they're not going to tell any deep secrets, but they are going to talk about information from people that actually got to play it when they were at CitizenCon, as well as, people sharing what CIG has already shared with us. Ops Chief, we're glad you like our background. Yes, today, Kimmy and I are hanging out at the M&V at Hurston. We try to have a different location each week. So today we're chilling. Now we're going to probably go back and have a beer after this is over with, or have
Oh,
something.
yeah.
I don't know, we'll have something.
He's buying.
I'm buying. Gee, thanks. Okay. Well, listen, thank you all again for following us and hanging out with us for the subscriptions tonight from Ops Chief. We are going to set up a raid. And be sure to follow us on Twitter and all other good stuff too, guys. Twitter, Instagram, our YouTube page. And we're going to be following, let's see, tonight we're going to raid. Okay, tonight we're going to raid Sigelian, and he's interviewing Joe Run and STEM Citizen from Yacht Club. You guys go over and give them a holler, send them some love, and definitely check them out. He does good interviews, and of course, Yacht Club is one of our favorite people that we enjoy watching. You guys know those folks. Joe Run, who runs Bar Citizens and all that other good stuff. So you guys have a great night. Love you all. Peace, love, and soul. Take care of yourselves.
Beware, the NPCs are alive.